The music was so loud that the windows vibrated with the rhythm of the live cover band. I was holding a plate of barbecue brisket, maintaining my composure out of sheer politeness, when my cell phone started buzzing inside my purse. I looked at the screen without much urgency, thinking it would be some congratulatory message, but it was Laurie. My daughter didn't usually call me during family parties, much less around midnight. I answered amidst the noise and laughter. "Hello?" Her voice was trembling. "Mom, get out of there right now and take the boy with you." I froze. "What's going on, honey? Don't ask anything. Just do it, please." The barbecue lost all its flavor. The world suddenly hung, suspended like a candle flame right before it goes out. To this day, I can see that scene with clarity, as if the party were preserved inside a glass bottle. It was the birthday of Mrs. Theresa Vance, my son-in-law Arthur's mother, an elegant woman, always wearing large jewelry that jingled when she waved. One of those people who never lets you forget who has more and who has less. I was there for Danny, my grandson. He was running between the tables wearing a gold paper crown from a fast food joint, proud because he called himself the king of the cake. The backyard was filled with warm string lights, the kind that look like fireflies trapped in glass. The smell of grilled steak mixed with fresh-cut grass and caramel cheesecake. Everyone was toasting, singing, taking photos. I smiled out of courtesy, though deep down I just wanted to be sitting in my house with my slippers, my knitting needles, and my peace. But you do things for love. That was when I received the call. I don't know what was colder, my daughter's desperate voice or the way my chest tightened as if someone had slammed a heavy door from the inside. Laurie never talks like that. She is calculating, prudent, always avoiding drama. Since she was a child, she was the one who organized her notebooks by color, the one who cried softly so as not to worry anyone. When she trembles, something serious is happening. I put away my cell phone, took a deep breath, and went to find Danny. I found him on the lawn with other children, his hands sticky with chocolate, laughing as if nothing bad could exist in the world. I approached with a tense smile. "Sweetie, we're leaving," I told him, stroking his soft black hair, just like his mother's when she was that age. "So soon?" "They haven't even cut the cake yet," he pouted. I didn't know how to explain it to him. What do you say when you don't understand anything yourself? "Grandma is tired, my life. Let's go home." "Okay." He took my hand without arguing, trusting as always. As we turned toward the exit, Theresa intercepted us. With her red wine dress and elaborate hairdo, she looked like the owner of the venue. "Rose, we're barely getting started." Her tone dripping with honey on the surface, but poison underneath. "Yes, Theresa," I lied gently. "I'm feeling a bit dizzy. My age, you know." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "That woman doesn't believe in weaknesses. She smells them and uses them." "Well," she said, shrugging her shoulders, "what a shame. Take care of the boy." We left. The contrast between the festive music and the silence of the night street gave me chills. Danny skipped beside me with innocence, dragging a little bag of candy that crinkled with every step. And then I saw it, a block away from my house. Under the dying light of the street lamp, there was a white van with the logo Valley Real Estate Services. Two men dressed in fluorescent vests were nailing something to my front gate. A thick, yellow, sealed sheet of paper. One was taking photos with his cell phone, the other was taping a second paper with industrial tape. I stopped dead in my tracks. My knees trembled. My heart, which before was beating fast from the scare, now pounded slowly, as if refusing to accept what it was seeing. "Grandma, what are those men doing at your house?" asked Danny, pulling on my blouse. I couldn't answer. My mouth felt dry, the air heavy, as if the whole state of Ohio had run out of oxygen. I advanced a few steps, almost dragging my feet. When I was close enough, I read, "Notice of foreclosure sale, sheriff's sale procedure. Foreclosure, foreclosure." I know that word. I heard it so many times during the 2008 recession when someone lost their house because of a bad loan. Foreclosure means your home no longer belongs to you, that someone else claims it, that a lifetime of effort can be reduced to a stamp and a signature. But I never signed anything. The man in the vest turned toward me. "Are you Rosemary Miller?" he asked with bureaucracy in his voice. I could barely nod. "Ma'am, all the information is here. There is an open file for default on payment. In 5 business days, we will proceed with the eviction and removal of assets. No, no, I interrupted with a broken voice. There must be a mistake. This house is mine. I don't owe anything. The man showed no compassion, just pointed to the document like someone pointing out the time on a clock. Here is your signature, your ID. Everything is in order. My hands shook. I took the paper like someone holding a bomb. I recognized my name, yes, but the signature looked identical to mine. Yet I didn't remember putting my pen to any contract, nor visiting any notary or title company. Nothing. Grandma? Danny hugged my leg, scared. I swallowed saliva, but the lump didn't go down. My cell phone buzzed again. Laurie. I answered almost without a voice. Mom, did you leave the party? Her tone was still loaded with urgency. Laurie, my house. There's a paper. They say that. My throat burned. She gasped on the other end. I knew it. Mom, listen to me. This is going to sound horrible, but someone filed paperwork for a mortgage in your name, and I think Arthur and his mother are behind it. The world spun slowly. The streetlights seemed to move away. Honey, I never signed. I know. That's why you have to come with me. I'm going to explain everything. I looked at my house, my refuge for more than 30 years. The blue door that Michael and I painted one Sunday before Danny even existed, the pots with geraniums that I water every morning. My entire life nailed to a piece of land, and now a seal said it might stop being mine. My legs gave way. I held onto the fence so I wouldn't fall. Danny looked at me with fear. They're going to take the house? I stroked his hair, trying to smile, but my lips didn't respond. The only thing I could say was, I don't know, my love, but we're not going to stay standing here. I picked him up in my arms like I did when he was a baby, even though he was heavier now. I walked toward the corner with my heart in my throat. Every step was a hammer blow to my memories. I felt the air smelled of rust and betrayal. That night, under the cloudy, mute sky, I understood something that would change my destiny. Someone had put a price on my home, and I had no idea how or when it happened. If someone had told me 20 years ago that a paper taped up with tape could make me tremble more than any tornado, I would have laughed. Houses don't fall just because someone decides so. At least that's what I believed. But that night, as I walked with Danny toward the taxi stand, with the foreclosure notice crumpled between my fingers, I felt that something inside me was indeed collapsing stone by stone, as if my history had been written in drywall and not concrete. After getting the boys settled, we met with Laurie at a 2-4-hour diner near downtown. The smell of freshly ground coffee and pancakes contrasted with the whirlwind in my chest. Danny was sleeping on my lap, exhausted, his face stained with chocolate. Laurie had red eyes, as if she had cried before seeing me. She has always been strong, but that night she looked like someone carrying a secret too heavy to bear. Mom, she said in a low voice so as not to wake Danny. There is something you have to know. I found out a few weeks ago, but I didn't want to worry you until I was sure. I thought I could fix it, but it got out of control. I took a deep breath. My heart beat slowly, but firmly, as if demanding to hear the complete truth. Tell me the truth, daughter. All of it. I don't want half words anymore. She took my hands. They were cold. I found your name on a list of delinquent clients linked to a finance company. At first, I thought it was a mistake, but then I heard Arthur and his mom talking. Something about when the foreclosure goes through and that you wouldn't find out, and that everything was arranged with the notary. My stomach contracted. Arthur. The name tasted bitter. He was always so polite, always offering to drive me to the doctor or handle paperwork, always with that smile that I now understand better. It was the smile of someone who was already planning something. Laurie nodded, swallowing hard. I don't have solid proof yet, but I know they used your documents. Mom, I think they forged your signature. Silence stretched between us like a shadow. Outside, the city was still alive, taxis passing, distant laughter, the sound of a car stereo filtering in from the parking lot. I observed my wrinkled hands, marked by years of work, sewing, baking, bills, sacrifices. Those hands never signed a mortgage. I know it. I swear it by Michael's memory. And here is where I need to tell you who I am, because what comes next only makes sense if you understand what I built. My name is Rosemary Miller. I am 66 years old. I have been a widow for 11 years. For more than 3 decades, I sold homemade pies and did alterations on school uniforms to support my children. I didn't study law or accounting, nor do I know how to speak prettily like Theresa, but I know how to work until my back burns and my hands throb. My late husband Michael was a construction worker. He and I raised this house with our own fingernails. One room first, then another. When the first heavy rain fell and the leaks flooded the hallway, I didn't cry. We climbed onto the roof with a bucket of sealant and fixed it together. This house isn't a piece of property, it is my life turned into bricks. When Michael died of a heart attack, a rainy afternoon in October, I thought everything would end there. But my children were young. Laurie was 15, Mike was 19. I couldn't collapse. I got up the next day, made coffee, put on my apron, and baked 20 pies. I sold them all. That's how I paid for Laurie's school. That's how I set up a little sewing shop in the garage. That's how I kept his memory alive. Mike got married and went to Houston for work. Laurie stayed. She was always responsible, always careful, always trying not to be a burden. When she met Arthur at the clinic where she did the billing, I thought he was a good guy. Pressed suit, blue tie, kind voice. Theresa invited us to dinner once before the wedding. Her house was huge, with expensive paintings and armchairs where you're afraid to sit so you don't stain them. I felt out of place, but I told myself that young love isn't measured by social differences. Over time, I discovered details. Theresa had an opinion on everything: Danny's school, the clothes Laurie wore, even how I arranged my patio, always with the smile of someone correcting you, disguising the poison with sugar. Arthur talked about investments, credits, managing the assets of the elderly better. I laughed uncomfortably, believing it was just conversation. I never imagined those words were maps leading to my door. As Laurie spoke in that diner, I remembered every moment Arthur asked for my driver's license to see if you qualify for government heating assistance, or when Theresa said I shouldn't worry about the future of the house. I also remembered the time Laurie asked me to sign a paper just to confirm you received the money for the baptism outfit. That day I was tired. I signed without reading. Now I wonder if they reused that signature, if they scanned my data, if everything was planned. I felt rage. Not the rage that screams, but the one that burns inside in silence, that makes you want to protect what you love with tooth and nail. I looked at Danny asleep, his long eyelashes resting on his round cheeks. I couldn't allow him to grow up seeing how his grandmother lost everything she built. I couldn't allow Laurie to live with guilt or fear. "Honey," I said finally, with a voice firmer than I expected. "I don't know how, but we are going to fight this. I am not handing over my house, neither alive nor dead." Laurie squeezed my hand. "I know someone who can help us," she whispered. "A lawyer, Jen. She was a friend of yours from church years ago." I remembered Jen, vaguely curly hair, glasses, strong character, a girl who defended half the world even if no one asked her to. If she was still like that, we had a chance. We paid the bill. Outside, the air was cold, but for the first time that night, I felt a thread of heat, hope. I didn't know the road would be long, but at least I was no longer alone in that labyrinth. As we took the taxi, I looked one last time toward my house from afar. The yellow sheet shone under the street lamp like a scream nailed to my door. I promise that paper won't be the end, I told myself. It will be the beginning. The foundation may shake, yes, but I am not built to fall. Saturday dawned gray with a damp wind tapping against the windows as if the city wanted to warn me of something. I slept barely a few hours. I dreamed of Michael, standing in front of the house door, protecting it with his body, holding a rusty rebar, saying, "Rose, you always check the foundation before a wall falls." I woke up with my heart beating strong, like a marching drum. Mid-morning, Laurie arrived with dark circles under her eyes, but calmer than the night before. She brought a thermos of coffee and a folder under her arm. "Mom," she said, greeting me in the kitchen. "Jen can see us today at 4. She says what I told her last night can't wait." I gripped the handle of the hot mug. A part of me wanted to breathe deep, pretend nothing was happening, make pancakes, water my plants, and go on with my Sunday as always. But another part, the part Michael left alive in me, demanded to move forward, not to flee, not to hide, to fight. "Let's go," I replied simply, but with a firmness that surprised us both. At 4 o'clock sharp, we were outside a small office in a strip mall, a clean white door with a discreet metal sign, Jennifer Sullivan, Civil and Family Law. When we knocked, a woman in her 50s opened up. Curly hair with silver streaks, thick glasses, a gaze that scans like a scalpel. "Rose," she smiled barely. "Years since I've seen you." She hugged me like someone recognizing an old battle friend, even though we had barely socialized in church times. That warmth held me up more than I imagined. We sat down. Laurie opened the folder and started explaining everything. The foreclosure, the rumors, the list of debtors, the suspicious conversations between Arthur and Theresa, the paper found taped to my door. Jen listened without interrupting, taking notes in small, organized handwriting. When we finished, she put the pen on the table. "This is no coincidence," she said with the tone of someone passing a sentence. "It's a planned move. To foreclose on your house like this, Rose, someone had to present debt documents, a promissory note, or a loan application using your name. And for that, they needed your signature, or a very well-made forgery." I felt a chill. I remembered that day with the supposed receipt for the baptism dress. The fatigue in my hands, the signature I left without looking. "What can we do?" I asked with a voice lower than I wanted. Jen interlaced her hands. "The first thing is to trace the debt. Know who registered it, with what documents, on what date. I can request access to the file, but I need you to sign a power of attorney to represent you." I took the pen without hesitation. I signed slowly, conscious, as if every stroke laid new bricks around my house. "The second thing," she continued, "is to protect assets and evidence. You cannot face this alone. Arthur and Theresa seem to have connections, and people like that act fast when they smell danger." The word danger fell like a stone inside me. I looked at Laurie. Her face held the most painful mixture, guilt and love. "I'm scared, Mom, but I can't keep quiet anymore." I stroked her cheek. "You are not alone, honey. We are going to get out of this together." Jen stood up, pulled out several forms, and handed them to me. "This is just the start. But get ready. When Arthur finds out we are seeking justice, he might react badly. It's probable they will want to pressure you, convince you to concede, manipulate you." I laughed without humor. "They aren't going to break me. I prefer sleeping in the yard than losing what I built." "I'm old, Jen, but not stupid." She smiled sideways. "And you have something more powerful than any corrupt notary: memory and dignity." Back home, the sky turned orange, then violet, a sunset that seemed painted by a sad artist. I cooked chicken soup with vegetables for Danny and us. The smell filled the house like an ancient hug. Danny played with toy cars on the floor. I watched him. Every little laugh of his was a reminder of why I was fighting. "Mom," Laurie said while we washed the dishes, "Arthur is coming tomorrow. He wants to talk to me." "Did he tell you?" She shook her head. "I heard him. Last night he was on a call with Theresa. Do you think they can move the foreclosure date? That they already have the digital signature ready? That only my authorization is missing so the grandma doesn't claim?" He said grandma as if I were a nuisance hindrance. It stuck in me. My blood boiled. "Fine," I said. "Let him come. But you won't be alone." And Sunday arrived. From the window, I saw Arthur's white car park in front of the house. He got out, elegant light shirt rolled up, expensive cologne arriving before he did. He knocked on the door with feigned softness. I opened it myself. "Good afternoon, Rose," he smiled. "Laurie is inside." "Come in," I replied without taking my eyes off him. He walked inside, observing everything like someone calculating value. He carried a black folder under his arm. His gaze swept the walls, the floor, the furniture, everything Michael and I put into this home. Laurie came out of the kitchen holding Danny's hand. Arthur leaned down to greet the boy, but Danny hid behind his mom. "Danny is shy," he said, laughing nervously. "He's not shy," I thought. "He recognizes you." We sat down. Arthur opened the folder and slid some papers toward me. "Mother-in-law," he said smoothly. "We found some late payments to a finance company. Nothing serious, but they can transfer the deed if they aren't covered. I want to help. I just need you to sign here to authorize a review of the credit. The same trick. The same poisoned honey." I looked at the papers. Everything looked legal. Logos. Stamps. A cold text full of clauses, but at the bottom, the space for my signature shone like a trap. We looked at each other. Him waiting for me to take the pen. Me feeling the weight of my whole history in my fingertips. "I don't sign anything without my lawyer seeing it," I said calmly. His smile tightened. "No need for a lawyer. It's routine." "Paying the gas bill is routine," I replied. "Handing over my house isn't." Laurie took a deep breath, firm. "Arthur, we aren't following your plan anymore. Mom doesn't owe any debt, and we know a signature was forged." Arthur's face transformed. The softness disappeared. I saw something cold in his eyes, something I had never noticed before. "Who told you that?" he asked slowly. "The truth doesn't need sponsors," I replied. Theresa appeared in the doorway seconds later. She had come in behind him like a shadow. We hadn't seen her arrive. She carried a cake in her hands as a gesture of peace, but her look was pure calculation. "Rose," she spoke with a sweet tone. "I think this is all a misunderstanding. We can fix it as a family. There is no need for lawsuits." The word family in her mouth sounded like old furniture breaking. I straightened up in the chair. "Family is who takes care of you, Theresa, not who waits for me to sign my ruin." She left the cake on the table with a soft thud. "Think about it. At your age, paperwork can get complicated. We can take care of everything." The disguised threat was there, crystal clear. I breathed and spoke with a calm I didn't know I had. "I am not going to sign. I am not going to yield. And if you keep trying, we will see you in court." The silence became heavy. Arthur slammed the folder shut. Theresa took him by the arm. Both left without saying goodbye. Before closing the door, Theresa turned to look at me. "You don't know who you messed with, Rose." I smiled slightly. "Neither do you." When the door closed, I felt something strange. Not fear, but a beginning. A battle had started, yes, but also a slow victory like cement hardening. I looked at my house, my walls, my life. They weren't going to take anything from me, not while I had breath and hands to fight. The following days felt like walking on wet concrete. Arthur stopped coming to the house. Theresa didn't call. That silence wasn't peace, it was strategy, and I knew it. Jen, on the other hand, moved fast. On Monday, very early, she called me. "Rose, I got access to the foreclosure file. I need you to come to the courthouse with me." Just hearing courthouse gave me a turn in my stomach, but I accepted. Laurie asked for time off work and accompanied me. We walked through the cold corridors of the building, full of people with folders. In a small office, a clerk handed us a copy of the file. Jen opened it as if it were an X-ray. "Here it is," she pointed. "Mortgage credit in the name of Rosemary Miller. Amount: $150,000. Term: 15 years. Signed 10 months ago." 10 months. I remembered that period. Danny's birthday, the flu that knocked me into bed, the time Laurie came crying because they were cutting staff at the clinic. I didn't see myself entering a title company office. "Look at this." Jen brought the page closer. "Here is your signature and your thumbprint." The signature looked traced from my ID. The fingerprint, who knows where they got it? I felt nauseous. "Which notary witnessed this?" Laurie asked. "Valley Title and Trust, Notary Public Hector Villarreal, read Jen." The name echoed in my memory. I remembered it from one of Theresa's dinners. I know a great notary. With him, everything goes fast. You almost don't realize when you've signed. At that moment it seemed like bragging. Now it sounded like an early confession. Jen kept reading. "Here it says that you attended, Rose, accompanied by your son-in-law Arthur and Laurie as a witness, that everything was explained to you, and that you accepted voluntarily." "That is a lie," I said, feeling the blood rise to my face. "I wasn't there, and neither was Laurie." Laurie nodded. "That day I was working a double shift. Can I request proof?" Jen smiled sideways. "Perfect. We are going to need it. The more contradictions, the better." We left there with a folder in Jen's hands. The foreclosure wasn't a mistake, it was a setup. The next step was going to the notary's office. Jen wanted me not to enter, so she went ahead with Laurie. I stayed on the bench outside, observing people leaving with manila envelopes and faces of those who have no idea what they just signed. I remembered every time someone at the market lost their house for trusting an acquaintance. I never thought I'd be part of that statistic. Me, who always mistrusted papers, was now trapped by them. Half an hour later, Jen and Laurie came out. The lawyer's expression was serious. "What happened?" I asked, standing up. The notary didn't want to give us additional copies without a court order, she explained, but he confirmed something without realizing it. He said, "Of course I remember, Mrs. Rose," if she came in nervous, holding on to her son-in-law's arm. "That means either he is lying or someone impersonated you." I felt a chill. Someone using my name, my age, my address, as if it were a borrowed costume. "And now?" I asked. "Now we are going to document every lie," Jen replied. "We are going to ask for security videos, check schedules, look for witnesses. And in the meantime, I have another idea." Her eyes shone with something I recognized, the same expression I had when discovering how to reinforce a wall with a damaged foundation. She explained her plan in my kitchen, smelling of brewed coffee. She placed a small black recorder on the table. "People like Theresa and Arthur get overconfident," she said. "They think others are stupid. They love to brag about what they've achieved. If they think you've resigned yourself, they will talk too much." Laurie frowned. "But after Sunday, they know we suspect." "That's why," Jen replied. "We have to change the role. Rose, you are going to do something very difficult. You are going to pretend you are getting tired, that you don't understand, that you are considering letting them help you. You are going to invite them to eat, and there we are going to listen to them." My gut churned, pretending fragility when the only thing I wanted was to scream at them, but I understood. Sometimes, for a wall to fall, you have to let the weight finish breaking it. "And if they realize?" I asked. "They won't." Jen shook her head. "They have underestimated you all your life. They think you are just a grateful old lady. Use it." Laurie clenched her jaw. "I don't like Arthur entering this house again," she murmured. "He isn't your husband," I corrected her gently but firmly. "He is the father of your child and the man who tried to rob us. That is different. And yes, he is going to come because I am not going to hide in my own house." The decision came out of my mouth before I even thought it through completely. But saying it, my back straightened. Jen slid the recorder toward me. "When you have them here, put it under the tablecloth, near where Theresa and Arthur sit. I'll take care of the rest later." Calling Theresa was like swallowing glass. Her voice arrived on the second ring, cloying. "Rosie, how are you? Calmer now?" I took a deep breath. "Yes, Theresa. I thought a lot about what we discussed. I think you're right. At my age, everything gets complicated. I don't want problems. I would like you all to come for lunch on Saturday. I want to hear properly how you can help me." On the other end, the silence lasted barely a second, but I could imagine her smile. "Of course, Rose. How good that you came to your senses. We'll go with pleasure. I'll bring dessert." I hung up. Laurie, who was in the kitchen doorway, looked at me with raised eyebrows. "That sounded nothing like my mom," she said. "Maybe I'm learning a new role," I replied. "The little old lady who gives up, just so they fall into their own hole." In my chest, there wasn't just fear. There was nervousness and determination. Like when one climbs a scaffold for the first time, you know you can fall, but you also know that from up there, you see everything better. Saturday was approaching. At that meal, I was going to serve rice, beans, and stew, and without them knowing, the first spoonful of their own truth. The week leading up to Saturday was long, heavy like a sack of wet cement. Every night I went to bed thinking of Michael's voice. Walls aren't brought down with blows, they are brought down with calculation. I was calculating. I prepared the house as if nothing was happening. I took out the white tablecloth I only used at Christmas. I polished the glasses inherited from my mother. I cut flowers from the garden and put them in a vase in the center of the table. I wanted everything to look perfect, familiar, warm. That's how trust is gained easier. That's how people lower their guard. Laurie wasn't calm. She walked through the kitchen like a caged tiger. "Mom, tell me you really want to do this," she insisted, for the 5th time that morning. "I want to protect my house and my grandson," I replied without stopping chopping onions. "Isn't that enough?" She exhaled, relaxing her shoulders, accepting there was no turning back. Danny was sleeping in his room after eating. I didn't want him present when the masks fell. My neighbor, Mr. Roberts, the same one who helped Michael build the fence 20 years ago, agreed to watch him in his living room while we ate. Later I would bring him back. At 1:45 p.m., the doorbell rang. I felt a wave of heat go up my arms. Laurie took my hand and squeezed it. "We are together," she murmured. I nodded. I walked to the door. Arthur was on the other side, wearing a blue shirt, strong cologne, and the smile of an insurance salesman. Behind him, Theresa carried a box with blackberry tart. "Good afternoon, Rose," she said, leaning in to kiss my cheek. "How nice that you invited us." Come in," I said with a soft, almost fragile voice. "So glad you came." Their eyes swept the house like hawks looking for a mouse. Arthur installed himself at the table without waiting for an invitation. Theresa left the dessert and started serving wine as if she were already part of the household. Laurie kept her distance, observing. She didn't smile. Before sitting down, I went to the kitchen for napkins, but in reality, I placed the recorder under the tablecloth, right in front of the places where they would sit. The small device remained hidden, light off, but recording inside, a silent heart waiting for a beat. I returned with a platter of pot roast, fresh salad, and the red rice Michael made every Sunday. The smell of bay leaf, thyme, and tomato filled the air. Everything seemed like a normal meal, except for the tension felt underneath. We served ourselves. Everyone ate. We chatted a bit about the weather, about Danny's school, about a neighbor recently operated on. Nothing seemed out of place. That naturalness was the trap. When the glasses were half empty, Theresa threw the first hook. "Rose, dear," she said, wiping her lips with the napkin. "You know we love you. That's why we came to help you with your legal matters. With age, things get complicated." Yes, I nodded with an almost guilty smile. "Sometimes I get confused. The other day I lost my bank card and almost had a fit. I think maybe I do need support from you guys." Arthur adjusted himself in the chair like a rooster, thinking he won the coup. "Exactly," he said, taking out the same black folder from days ago. "We brought the clean documents so you can sign them whenever you want. This simply authorizes us to administer the house, to regularize payments. Nothing more. Nothing more." The phrase sounded like a trap painted with honey. I looked at the folder, pretended to doubt. "And if later I can't back out?" "Oh, Rose," Theresa laughed softly. "Why think negatively? We are family. Family." That word pronounced by her was a dull knife, but it cut just the same. "And how exactly would you manage to help me?" I asked with studied innocence. Arthur took a sip of wine and leaned forward. "Well, look, once you sign the authorization, I can process the refinancing. With that, we cover the debt and stay in charge of the payments. You don't worry about anything." The debt they invented themselves, I thought. Theresa added in a low voice, like sharing a confidence. "Besides, we could think of something more for the future. Maybe sell a part of the lot or mortgage for investment. The house is worth more than you think. It would be foolish to leave it without profit." My heart began to beat faster. Their words were disguised admissions. We were close. I looked at Laurie, who squeezed the edge of the napkin with her fingers. I felt her fear, her rage. I breathed slowly. I had to keep acting. "And you would keep the administration?" "For how many years?" I asked. Arthur smiled. "As long as necessary." "You will keep living here, of course, but legally it is more efficient for another person to appear to manage sales and credits." There it was. In our name. They didn't even take care to hide it. "And Laurie?" I asked slowly. "Would she sign too?" Theresa replied quickly. "No need. You are the owner. Your signature is enough for us to administrate." She stopped. Arthur looked at her with slight fury. She corrected herself. "I mean, so we can help you." Both drank wine nervously. I lowered my gaze to the table, letting the silence do its work. The recorder kept everything like a deep well filling up. After a few minutes, I feigned a tired sigh. Sometimes I think I no longer have the strength for so many procedures. Maybe I should accept your proposal. The shine in Arthur's eyes was immediate, the hunger of the wolf before the tired sheep. "Excellent, Rose. If you like, we can sign today." I brought a pen. He took it out of his pocket, placed it in front of me like a sword on a dueling table. I took it only to feel its weight. I wouldn't sign, but they needed to believe I would. "Before," I said softly, trembling just barely. "Give me a moment. I'm going for my glasses. I don't want to make a mistake." I got up, walked to the kitchen. Laurie also got up with the excuse of serving more bread. In the kitchen, she looked at me with wet eyes. "Mom, I can't believe what I heard." "Shh." I put my finger on her lips. It's not over yet. I took my glasses, took a deep breath. When we returned, both were checking the tablecloth distractedly, as if measuring where I would sign. They didn't notice the recorder. I sat down, touched the pen, turned it between my fingers. Arthur, Theresa. You talk about helping me, but tell me something honestly. I looked straight at them. What would happen if I don't sign? Silence. Then Arthur smiled, but his eyes didn't. It would be a shame. You could lose the house in foreclosure. It's a matter of time. Debts are debts. Theresa added, if you don't want to, someone else will buy it. And well, Danny deserves a stable place. It would be a pity if Laurie couldn't support him. There I felt the blow. They didn't just want my house, they wanted my grandson's roof. My blood ignited, but I didn't explode. No. I understand, I murmured. I put the pen on the folder, slowly closed the file, raised my eyes with the most dangerous calm I had had in years. Thank you for being so clear. I think I've heard enough. Laurie stood by my side. There were no longer smiles on our faces. So, will you sign? Asked Arthur impatiently. I smiled slowly. No, not today. Maybe never. Their faces deformed. The theater was over. Theresa opened her mouth to protest when I slid my hand under the tablecloth and pressed the button on the recorder, securing the final evidence. The food was delicious, I said, standing up, and the best part was listening to you speak with such confidence. Arthur frowned. Listening to us? I lifted the edge of the tablecloth barely an inch. I showed them the small recorder, without taking it out completely, just enough so they recognized it. The color drained from their faces. Nothing more useful than truths spoken with wine, I added. The glass trembled in Theresa's hand. Arthur stood up abruptly. That has no legal validity. We'll see, I replied, because tomorrow I will go to the district attorney with our lawyer. Everything you have said, plus the evidence from the file and the notary, will be more than enough to start. Theresa's chair screeched when she stood up. You wouldn't do that, Rose. I already did, I answered. And this is just the beginning. Arthur took a deep breath, containing rage. You are going to regret this. I smiled with a calm that came from the oldest depth of my soul. Maybe. You should have left without saying goodbye. The door closed with a slam. My house was left in silence. A new silence, not of fear, but of preparation. I sat down, my legs trembled inside, but my heart was firm as a column. Laurie knelt in front of me with bright eyes. Mom, you did it. I held her face slowly. I barely raised the first wall. Tomorrow we start knocking down theirs. And in my chest, for the first time in months, I felt hope. I slept almost nothing that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Theresa's face when she saw the recorder, Arthur's tight lips, the way his security cracked for a second. It wasn't enough to win, I knew, but it was a start. And at my 66 years, I learned that great works are raised with small and stubborn beginnings. At 8 inches the morning on Monday, Jen arrived at the house with her hair still damp and a fat folder under her arm. Ready, Rose? She asked, entering directly into the kitchen as if she had never left my life. More than ever, I replied. My hands were sweating, but my voice came out steady. Laurie was already seated at the table with dark circles, a notebook, and a manila envelope where we kept the recorder and a copy of the foreclosure notice. Today we are going to do 2 things, explained Jen while pouring coffee like she belonged there. 1. File a formal complaint for fraud and forgery. 2. Ask the judge to suspend the foreclosure sale while it is investigated. I don't promise miracles, but I promise a fight. I nodded. I squeezed the hot cup. The smell of cinnamon and sugar reminded me that whatever happens, I'm still alive. The district attorney's office smelled of old paper and cheap disinfectant. The hallway was full of people, women with babies in arms, men with worn folders, bored police officers leaning on the wall. We sat in plastic chairs that squeaked. When our turn came, we entered a small office. A man with a wrinkled shirt and glasses on the tip of his nose looked at us tiredly. Jen took the floor with the assurance of someone who has done this 100 times. My client is a senior citizen, she said, pointing to me. Her house is in foreclosure process for a mortgage she never signed. There are signs of signature forgery, identity theft, and possible collusion between a notary, a finance company, and members of her in-laws. I listened to Senior Citizen and wanted to laugh. My knees hurt, yes, but I also felt a strength I didn't have at 30, the strength of knowing what a worked life is worth. Jen put the folder on the desk, copies of the foreclosure file, IDs, the notice taped to my door, a written statement stating the existence of the recording. "We want all this to be investigated," she concluded. The district attorney sighed. "It's going to be a long process," he warned. "The notary and the finance company are going to defend themselves. They have lawyers, contacts." Jen interrupted him politely, but with an edge. "My client has something more than contacts, the truth and the law on her side, and the right not to be thrown out of her house while it is clarified who is using it." Finally, the man nodded, took notes, stamped papers. When we left, we carried a copy of the complaint with an official seal in hand. It wasn't a complete shield, but at least we were no longer an invisible murmur. Then we went to the civil court, where the foreclosure file was. Cold hallways, high walls, hurried people, those places always scared me. I feel that anything signed there weighs more than a life. Jen submitted a motion asking for a stay of execution to stop the sale while the possible forgery and criminal complaint were reviewed. We had to wait almost an hour sitting on a hard bench. I looked at my hands, Laurie looked at her phone, Jen looked at her watch. Finally, a clerk called us to a small room. The judge, a man in his 40s with tired eyes, read over the file, then Jen's motion. He frowned. "Here it says that you were at the notary that day. Mrs. Rose," he commented without looking up. "You state that was not the case." I swallowed saliva. "I state it, Your Honor. That day I was at the clinic where my daughter works. She can prove it." Laurie stepped forward. "I have entry and exit logs, time-stamped emails, even a message I sent to my mom at that same time. She never left with me to any notary." Jen added, "And there is a criminal complaint in progress. Letting the foreclosure continue while it is investigated would put a senior citizen at risk who could be a victim of fraud." The judge fell silent for a moment. I could hear the tick-tock of the wall clock. I felt my heart in my throat. Finally, the man gave a long sigh. "I am going to grant a temporary stay of the sale," he said. "All proceedings are halted until the merits of the matter are reviewed, and there is clarity on the validity of this mortgage. Notify the lender and the title company." I felt a band that was squeezing my chest loosen. It wasn't the final victory, but it was the first solid pillar. "Thank you," escaped me softly. In the street, the light seemed different. It wasn't that the sun shone brighter, it was that I no longer felt a rope around my neck. Jen smiled. "We bought time," she said. "Now we need to win justice." Justice, or at least little pieces of it, began to peek out 3 days later. Jen called us at noon. "Come to the office. There is news." I went with Laurie with that mixture of fear and curiosity felt when opening an important envelope. Jen had her desk full of printed sheets, and her hair gathered in a makeshift bun. "I asked a contact to review the finance company's information," she explained. "And look what came out." She showed us an internal document where Arthur's name appeared as an external advisor linked to several loans, including mine. In another email, it read, "The Mrs. Miller case is already greenlit thanks to Theresa's contact. Notary 28 confirms." I felt a stab in my stomach. It was no longer suspicion, it was written confirmation. "This proves they didn't just know about the credit," said Jen. "They promoted it, managed it, used your data, as if you were just another file." Laurie put her hand to her mouth. "I brought him into our life, Mom," she whispered. "I opened the door of this house to him." I looked at her. I saw the girl who one day came crying because she had been teased at school, and the woman who now cried for not having seen the evil in her own husband in time. "You opened the door of your heart to him, not the safe," I said. "No one imagines that family is going to turn into a thief. The sin is theirs, not yours." Jen nodded. "With this, the complaint is strengthened, and the judge handling the foreclosure will have more reasons to see that there is something dirty here." That same afternoon, while washing dishes, the doorbell rang. I thought it would be Mr. Roberts bringing Danny, but when I looked out the window I saw something I didn't expect. Arthur, alone, without a tie, wrinkled shirt, marked dark circles. I opened the door with the chain on. "What do you want?" I asked without unlocking it. He swallowed saliva. "To talk. Rose, please. Just a few minutes. I looked at him. I no longer saw the good catch that appeared one day. I saw a scared man, yes, but above all I saw someone who only seeks to save his own neck. I have nothing to talk to you about without my lawyer, I replied. It's just that. Everything is getting out of control, he stammered. They called me from the bank, from the lender, from the notary's office. If you continue with this, we are all going to end up bad. I was already bad, I answered. Before starting, you wanted to leave me on the street. He ran his hand through his hair, desperate. We can make a deal. We cancel the credit, see how to get your name out of the file, you withdraw the complaint, and everyone goes on with their life. I laughed, a dry laugh that surprised me. Everyone goes on with their life? And with my fear? With the sleepless nights? With the shame of knowing that my own in-laws wanted to take my house? No, Arthur, that isn't erased with a deal. He lowered his gaze for a second. I didn't want to go that far, he whispered. I was just going to make a small loan at first. Then Theresa insisted. The notary said it was easy, that old people don't even notice. And when I realized I was in up to my neck, I listened to him not out of compassion, but to confirm. Then, now it's your turn to do something you never did, I said. Take responsibility. If you want to talk, go to the police station and tell everything. I already told my part. I saw his eyes fill with mixed rage and fear. Are you gonna sink your grandson's family? He tried. No, I replied. I am trying to save it. You are sinking yourselves. I closed the door. I stayed a few seconds leaning on it, feeling my heart beat strong but stable. I looked around my living room, the photos, the old furniture, the cracks in the wall that Michael and I patched so many times. I thought about the stay of the sale, the complaint, the emails where my name appeared as a business deal. For the first time, I understood clearly that this was no longer just about a deed. It was for something that weighs more than any property title. My name, my history, and my right not to be treated like a signable paper. And I knew that what came next, the trial, the hearings, the decisions about Theresa, about Arthur, and about Danny's future would be hard, yes, but I wasn't so afraid anymore because the foundation of this construction was finally being placed on the right side. The weeks after that visit from Arthur were like climbing a steep hill, slow, tiring, but with a clearer view each time. Jen filed an expansion of the complaint, incorporated the internal emails, the recording of the dinner, and a brief pointing out the probable participation of the notary. She also requested access to security cameras from the title company. I don't know if it was luck or the hand of fate, but the cameras did exist, and what they showed left no room for doubt. In the video, a woman with dyed brown hair, similar height to mine, entered the office with Arthur on her arm. She wore a beige sweater similar to one of mine. She signed papers, smiled at the camera, but it wasn't me. Her way of walking, her hands without sunspots, her voice when she greeted everything different. A double. A woman hired to impersonate me. When Jen showed us the images, I felt a void in my stomach. That was it. They had supplanted me. They had used my name like someone uses a stolen key. Laurie cried in silence. I did too, but not from fear. I cried for how small love can become when money enters. With this, said Jen, the case changes completely. There is identity theft, forgery, and aggravated fraud. This goes to trial. I thought of Theresa, of her sweet voice saying, "We are family." What a betrayed word. The day of the first hearing arrived with a heavy sky. We entered the civil court like someone entering enemy territory, scared but with heads held high. Laurie was by my side, and although her hands trembled, she didn't leave my side for a moment. Danny stayed with Mr. Roberts, who took him to the park with a new ball. Upon entering the room, I saw Theresa sitting with dark glasses, impeccable hair. Beside her, Arthur looked pale, without his usual arrogance. Behind them, a young lawyer leafed through papers with nervous speed. They didn't look at me, or they didn't dare. Jen spoke with clarity, almost with an edge. My client is a victim of patrimonial fraud through identity theft. We request the immediate nullification of the mortgage contract, sanctions for those involved, and protection measures to ensure they do not approach Mrs. Rose or her property. Arthur's lawyer tried to defend himself. There is no proof that Mrs. Rose was not present. Jen held up a USB drive. Sure? Let's review. The judge asked to play the video. The room went silent. We saw the fake woman enter the office. When the judge paused on the face of the imposter, he looked at my features and then those of the video. Different. Very different. Theresa swallowed saliva. Arthur lowered his head. "Do you wish to explain who this woman is?" asked the judge. They didn't answer. Jen presented medical records from Laurie's work, the day and time of the contract, the trace of the non-matching fingerprint, the recording of the dinner where both spoke of the plan. The judge took a serious breath. Given the accumulation of evidence, the mortgage contract is provisionally annulled, and a restraining order is extended so that Arthur Vance and Theresa Vance do not approach Mrs. Rose within 300 meters until the criminal investigation concludes. The appearance of the notary and the lender is also requested to answer for probable crimes of forgery and fraud. Laurie let out the air she had kept in her chest. I felt something inside me loosen like a knot that is finally cut. It wasn't the final victory yet, but it was justice walking toward us. Months later, the prosecutor called. Arthur accepted a plea deal. He confessed participation in the fraud, ratted out the notary, and the woman who impersonated me. He received a sentence with restitution of damages and community service. He had to pay fines and was left with a criminal record. Theresa didn't accept guilt at first. She fought, alleged, lied until the emails, the recording, and the testimony of the fake Rose pointed to her as a co-conspirator. To reduce her sentence, she accepted a declaration and signed an agreement never to claim property or inheritance from me or Laurie. She also has a restriction from approaching Danny, except for future authorization from a judge, something that to this day hasn't happened. Notary Villarreal faces administrative and criminal proceedings. When I saw his name in the newspapers, I felt something similar to satisfaction, but also sadness. How many other women like me signed without knowing? How many more houses were business disguised? I couldn't save them all, but I saved mine, my home, my history. The house remains here, the same and different. I cleaned the walls, planted new bougainvilleas, painted the windows blue as Michael liked. Every morning I make coffee and feel that he is still sitting across from me, smiling with crumbs in his beard. Laurie has healed slowly. Twice a week she goes to therapy. She laughed again. Went back to looking pretty without makeup. She has learned to set boundaries. Sometimes she says it still hurts to have loved someone capable of so much damage. I answer her that love is not a sin. The sin is manipulating it. Danny grows like a firm tree. When he asked one day, "Grandma, why doesn't Grandma Theresa come anymore?" I answered him without poison, but with truth. Because sometimes people make mistakes, and while they learn, it is better to have distance to be safe. He nodded with the wisdom of a child. "So, are we safe here?" I hugged him harder than ever. "Yes, my love. Sometimes I go out to the patio at night. The air smells of wet earth when I water the plants. I observe the neighborhood lights, the distant barking of dogs, and I feel a peace I thought lost. I no longer fear knocking on the door thinking of foreclosure notices. I no longer fear calls at dawn. I no longer fear being left alone. I am not alone. I am with me, with my daughter, with my grandson, with my clean name, with a house that I defended, as a heart is defended. People at the market sometimes ask me, "Mrs. Rose, how did you manage not to let them win?" I answer smiling, "I didn't build this house with fear, I built it with strength, and that's how I defended it. Because if I learned one thing, it is this. A woman who has raised walls with her own hands does not let them fall for a paper signed in secret." If you got this far, thank you. Thank you for listening to this story that isn't just mine. It belongs to all the people who have felt that someone wants to snatch away what was built with years of work, love, and sacrifice. If you ever went through something similar or know someone who fought for their home, for their family, or for their dignity, tell me in the comments. Tell me where you are watching this video from. I would love to read you. And if you want more stories like this of justice, of bravery, of second chances, subscribe. Because every day we share tales that remind us that no one is too big to fall, nor too small to resist. Thanks for staying until the end. See you in the next story.